Do you know your loved one's true nature? This time, it's about my wife, who married me without knowing my true nature, getting caught cheating, and facing consequences. People's true nature can sometimes lead things in unexpected directions. Caught my wife cheating with a gang member. My father is the head of the XX gang. Since my dad is the head of the gang, I was invited. This is a sudden question, but do you have anything you are hiding from other people? For example, do you keep some dodgy books in your closet? Or maybe you ate your family's snacks? Or you couldn't tell in your family that you lost your job? I believe that everyone lives with some kinds of secret. My secret was a little deep, but my wife, who knew nothing about it, was doing whatever she wanted. Naturally, the other guy, who has no idea of my secret, gets on board. That's why I decided to mobilize the whole family to sanction it. Let's start with my specs, shall we? I am a 25 years old truck driver for my mother's transportation company. My wife is 3 years older than me and works at a bar. We have no children. The first time we met was when I went to the bar where my wife works. I was having a drink with some colleagues from work, and we were having a good time. My wife was responsible for our table, and later, she became my wife. She was so friendly and seemed to want to have a chat with me.
Would you like another beer?
No thanks, I'm good.
Don't be like that. I'll give you one.
No, I'm really fine. After,
How about a beer?
she asked.
How about some snacks?
My wife is just an employee, not a manager or anything. It was crazy that she would try to give me extra beers. More to the point, I am usually not so good at receiving free gifts. For those who are happy about free gifts, it may be a blessing, but for me, it was just a nuisance. Even after, I had to keep defending my wife's extra service, but we all had a good time at the bar. And then I asked for the bill. I was young, but I was the son of the president of the company. It made sense that I should be the one to take care of the bill. But of course, it was my wife who took my bill. She gave me the receipt and some changes. Then I found a piece of paper along with the receipt. Her name and phone number was written on the paper. The name was obviously the same written on her name tag, Michelle. She was hitting on me, but I wasn't particularly happy about it. I wasn't really fond of the aggressive type who comes on strong during customer service, if you know what I mean. I put the phone number into my pocket and planned to shred it later. My wife was very soppy and watched us go away. Nothing happened for the next month or so, and I was working as usual. I was in charge of the long-distance truck, so I wouldn't go home for about 5 days without a hitch. But it was my mother's birthday, so I was rushing home. By the way, I have a family of 4, my mother, my father, and my sister, Alice. We all get along well. When I arrived at the company, I saw a woman standing in front of the office.
Finally, we met again.
It was Michelle who was there. How did you find this place? At first I wondered why, but then I thought about it and remembered that I had given the company's address when I paid the bill. That's how she found my company. How aggressive. I have mixed feelings of happiness and disappointment. Why are you here?
Because I really wanted to meet you again, Paul.
I see. But it's better for you not coming to my workplace.
The phone number I gave you at the bar. It's mine.
I know.
Then why didn't you call me?
I didn't have to.
So do you hate me?
I neither like nor hate you.
So you don't hate me.
Michelle was awfully positive. I never understood the way she thinks. Anyway, please go home.
Can I come back tomorrow?
I didn't say that.
I'll be back tomorrow.
She said so and left. When I went inside the office, I was told that she had been coming to the office every day recently. When someone in the office opens the door for her and asks who she wants to see, she says,
I'm here to see Paul.
Since she knew that I would be back in the office today, she has been waiting for me since the morning. Midway through the conversation, my mother chimed in with a grin, saying, You sure know how to charm a lady, don't you? Well, being liked is not a bad thing. To be honest, I've always been a little reluctant to date women. It's not that I didn't think about getting married to people I had dated in the past. However, I have various issues, and despite getting into relationships, I've ended up repeating the cycle of breaking up once I disclosed them. I thought it was more likely to happen with Michelle, too. After that, Michelle continued to come to my work and bring me lunch boxes and snacks. At first I was disgusted, but her seriousness pushed me to open up little by little. After she has been coming to my office for about a month, one day she made lunch and brought it to me.
Oh, you'll take it.
Since she had been turned down so many times, she seemed surprised that I accepted it. Is it something I shouldn't accept?
No, not at all. I'm so happy you accepted it.
When I saw Michelle's smiling face and realized how much she was thinking about me, I developed romantic feelings for her. While eating the lunch she made, I asked her, "Would you like to go for a drive sometime?" She stood up with sparkling eyes and said,
Let's go.
and that's how I got close to Michelle. However, we didn't talk about the problems I was having at this point. I was thinking to talk about it when I proposed to her. About 6 months into our relationship, Michelle's desire to get married had reached its peak.
I can't wait to marry you.
As she started saying that kind of thing every day, I began to think about marriage too. But first, I must confess the secret I have kept from her for so long. I have decided to tell her everything. Listen, I need to talk to you about my family. Though Michelle looked puzzled at my words, she soon turned to me with a big smile.
I don't care about your family issues or anything else. I'm marrying you.
No, I want you to listen.
You don't have to. If you want to marry me, then that is all what matters.
Yeah, you're right. Without being able to disclose my secret, I ended up getting married under the momentum of my wife's enthusiasm. Well, to be honest, it would be a lie to say that I wasn't moved by my wife's words. She was the first woman who truly loved me for who I am, flaws and all. The marriage went smoothly, and I moved out of my parents' house and rented an apartment. Even though it was newlywed life, I was hardly ever home because of my work. I knew I was making her lonely, but I couldn't afford to put a hole in my job. Above all, I love my job. I have learned a lot from my work. I learned the basics of being a professional from the old-timers at the market on the way for pickups. I know it's usually your parents who teach you those, but my family had its own complications. Anyway, during what is typically considered the honeymoon period, Michelle and I were living apart for the most part. She understood this situation well, and she said,
I want to support you as you work so hard.
I thought she was a really good wife. I had no idea at the time that she had a plan. Looking back, the fact that she pushed so hard to get married to me in the first place is now more suspicious than ever. But at that time, I trusted my wife so much that I never doubted her. Even after marriage, my wife continued working just as before. About 6 months after our marriage, my wife's behavior began to change. Even when I came home, she wouldn't be there. She started saying things like,
I'm going out for drinks with my coworkers tonight and staying over.
her overnight stays away from home became more frequent. Well, I wasn't much around either, so I have no right to complain. That's why I didn't say anything and just saw my wife off. When she wasn't around, I would go back to my parents' house and spend time with my family.
Oh, you're home again today.
You're newlyweds? Are you sure you want to come home so often? Michelle is out with her friends. And to my words, my parents replied,
I don't blame her. You weren't often at home, were you?
well, that's what happens. Hey, what are you going to do if he gets divorced after making Paul work so hard? He says he wants to work more. He is the one who wants to work more. That's two different things. I don't mind if Michelle stays out overnight. At that point, Alice chimes in.
I can't believe that she just leaves you and go out to have fun.
Ever since she was a little girl, Alice had always felt that I was the best, so much so that even at the age of 23, she was still unable to find a boyfriend. It's what you'd call a brother complex, I suppose. When I got married, Alice was the only one who opposed me.
I knew from the moment I met her that she was weird, especially after marriage.
When Alice started to get angry, our father started calming her down.
Oh well, that's why he is coming home to his parents.
Alice seemed reluctant to accept our father's words. Alice has a way of getting out of hand when she gets angry, so that was a big help. I went to work again. The next time I'll be returning is in 5 days. In the end, I only saw my wife for about an hour, and we didn't have any particular conversation. She came home while I was relaxing at home. The moment she saw me like that, she gave me a suspicious look.
When you come home, all you do is just laze around. I'm tired of that.
I was speechless at her abusive word, which I had never heard before.
You get paid just by driving a truck. That's so easy.
Then she sighs loudly and goes straight into the bedroom. It's understandable that my wife would be upset if I'm not at home so often. With such thoughts in mind, I headed off to work. Although I was pushed into marriage by my wife, somehow she had become an irreplaceable presence to me. However, gradually, signs of shadow began to appear in our married life. In fact, she was involved in a certain scheme here. While my wife's words hurt me, I couldn't let it affect my work. I left the office as usual and headed toward the market as planned. As I gazed out the window at the scenery along the way, I started to feel better. Before I knew it, perhaps because I was too focused, the work was finished sooner than I had expected. I called Michelle, but for some reason she didn't pick up the phone. I left a message and headed home. A while back, even when I was at work, I used to call her at the same time every day. Thinking about it now, I feel guilty towards my wife. When I get home next time, maybe I'll suggest going on a trip nearby. Muttering these words, I drove on and saw the familiar view of the city. Little did I know, an event that would shatter those thoughts was looming right in front of me. I arrived at the office around 10 o'clock. My mother was still there. "Oh, you're early," she said. "Yay, I got here sooner than I thought," I replied. My mother's expression turned unusually serious at my words. Did something happen with Michelle? After all, she is my mother. She must have noticed something different in me. I wanted to tell the truth, but in the end I said, "No, nothing happened." Then my mother turned her back to me. "If there is something wrong, tell me. You are my precious son." "Yeah, thank you." After saying that, I left the company. Now, here is where the hell begins. My wife and her lover, that is. When I arrived home, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in the parking lot where I have a contract. Unauthorized parking, or my wife's friend. As I checked the apartment, I saw lights on in our room. For the time being, I parked my car in a nearby vacant lot and decided to walk back home. Opening the apartment door, I noticed a pair of men's shoes next to my wife's. As I stood there in shock, I could hear voices from the back of the room.
"John, you're staying over tonight, right?"
Well, I mean, it's practically my home already.
"Well, that's true. Paul is hardly ever home, so this is practically your home."
Living the easy life here. All expenses are paid by him.
Exactly. Paul pays for everything here.
Poor guy, clueless as ever. He's probably off driving a truck right now. Tough luck.
You are way cooler than him, who can do anything but drive a truck.
Let's go for another round then.
With that, I heard suggestive noises coming from the back of the room. Could it be that I've walked into the wrong house? I stood frozen at the entrance, overwhelmed by the thought. But then, I started to see this as an opportunity given by God. Normally, if you suspect infidelity, you'd hire a detective or check the smartphone for evidence. In my case, the scene was right there. Thinking of the trouble saved, even the worst situation can have a silver lining. With determination, I quietly entered and flung the room door open. "What the hell are you two doing?" The two were startled by my entrance. It looked like they were just about to start. Who would want to witness their wife and her lover having sex?
"What's up? Aren't you at work?"
My wife asks me while she is still naked. "Put on some clothes first." The two of them hastily moved away from each other at my words. But the other man flaunted his stuff, smirking for some reason.
Fine, I'll let it slide for today,
said the man that my wife was having an affair with. I didn't understand, but he said it so confidently that I almost thought I was the one mistaken. "What are you talking about? This is my house, and that's my wife."
So what? Michelle says she loves me. She never liked you from the start.
What? The marriage began with my wife's passionate pursuit. I was even more confused. Then my wife, wrapped in a blanket, began to speak.
"That's right. I never liked you from the beginning.
What do you mean?
As long as I could leave my parents' house, that was enough."
Her family was a strict lineage of teachers. I knew that much. I never imagined our marriage was just a means for her to leave her parents' home.
I just wanted to get out quickly, so I chose someone who would agree easily. You are plain and only focus on works. Perfect, right?
So that's how you felt about me.
You thought you were loved. You're so full of yourself, talking about your complicated family. Hilarious. John is much more wonderful than an ordinary man like you. If you knew John's true identity, you might be erased, you know.
At this point, my feelings towards my wife had already dropped to zero. I thought she was spouting nonsense after cheating.
Well, it's a good chance to share our history with you.
I care less, but just put on your pants. Then I was forced to listen to the history of my wife and the guy, which I had zero interest in. Apparently, he came to the bar where my wife works and saved her when she was harassed by a drunkard. Swept off her feet by his manliness, my wife took him home that very day. I was at work, so our house was perfect to make out. Since then, he had been timing my work days to move into my house. Thinking back, I remember finding unfamiliar socks in the bathroom a few times. I should have suspected something at that point, but I trusted my wife so much that I just assumed they were hers. Anyway, it seemed like the man was planning to take over this room.
I've decided to live here. So you just pay up and leave.
No way, that's absurd. Why should I pay to live here? If anything, you should pay.
You sure you want to say that?
Didn't I tell you? If you knew John's true identity, you'd be wiped out.
My wife and the guy smirked as they said this. I don't care. Just get dressed already.
You seem eager to know.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, I'll tell you anyway.
I truly care less about who you are.
My dad's the boss of the Lucky Fine Gang. If I told him about you, you'd be gone in a flash.
The Lucky Fine Gang. I finally understood the guy's confident attitude. The Lucky Fine Gang is the most notorious mafia groups around here. I was truly shocked to learn the other man was the son of its boss. After all, against the mafia, even the law doesn't apply. They have their own rules, and bringing up common sense is futile. That's why I'm not fond of the mafia. Hearing this, John and my wife burst into laughter.
If you understand that, then hurry up and get out.
Oh, and don't forget to pay for dinner tonight.
You're extorting me now. I thought this was it, so I looked straight at John and Michelle and said, "Call your father."
What?
Come on, hurry up. I want to talk to the boss.
Are you out of your mind?
I could see a hint of panic on John's face. On the other hand, I remained completely calm, not even slightly shaken. Of course, I wasn't provoking him without a plan.
My old man's busy. He doesn't have time to deal with someone like you.
Even so, I couldn't back down, especially if John really was the son of the Lucky Fine Gang's boss. So, is it okay if I call him myself? There is no doubt that your father is the boss of the Lucky Fine Gang, right? He must have thought I was bluffing. He regained his composure and smirked again.
Go ahead and call if you want. Your bluffing won't work on me.
Okay then. As I took out my smartphone, John's forehead began to sweat. Hello, can you come over now? John and Michelle were puzzled by my words.
That call's fake, right?
Sure, as if you could fool John like that.
Well, whatever. Just wait a bit longer. You should get dressed before that. Aren't you cold being naked all this time? Then, in less than 5 minutes, the doorbell rang, and I went outside.
Hey, there's no parking space. Street parking is a crime, you know.
Yeah. Just park in front of that car. I pointed at the John's car as I said this.
Rushing me over here. I almost took the wrong turn.
The person who came in was my father. But the moment he saw my dad, John's legs gave out. Ignoring his reaction, I said to my father, "Hey, Dad, this guy claims he's your son. But I thought I only had a sister." That's right. The head of the Lucky Fine Gang was none other than my dad himself.
Impossible. I'm loyal to your mom.
My dad denied my question with a red face. Indeed, my dad still loves my mom. There's no way my dad, who is completely under my mom's thumb, could have a secret child. Then what's this guy? I've never seen him around the gang members. As I said this, my dad looked at John and said one thing.
So, why is he naked?
Intimidated by my dad's glare, the other man was trembling and couldn't do anything. And Michelle was just standing there, dumbfounded. Then my mom and Alice also showed up. It seemed they had come together in my father's car. At the sight of Alice, Michelle screamed.
My boss.
Oh, I forgot to mention, Alice is the manager of the bar where my wife works. So, I had invited my colleagues to the bar for drinks. I had suspected it, but it seems my wife didn't know about my relationship with Alice. Alice delivered a fierce slap to my trembling wife. Then, Alice grabbed Michelle's hair and dragged her off the bed.
What the hell do you think you're doing to my precious brother? Alice, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
My wife was desperately apologizing, but Alice wasn't fazed. When Alice gets angry, she becomes uncontrollably violent.
Who do you think covered your debts?
What? With my wife's hair still in her grasp, Akari turned to me and said,
This girl had debts everywhere, and debt collectors even came to our bar. I covered those debts for her. Talk about ungrateful.
I later learned that Michelle had been borrowing money left and right for her leisure. Since the bar covered her debts, her salary had been deducted. But after getting together with John, she eventually stopped coming to work.
I don't care about the money. I can forgive you for hurting my brother.
With that, Alice started relentlessly beating Michelle. Hey, that's enough. Alice stopped at my words. It's okay now. Let's handle the rest according to our family's rules. As I said this, my dad nodded and said,
Take them away.
At that signal, a bunch of intimidating people appeared from the entrance. And so, Michelle and John were taken away, still naked, to somewhere unknown. Later, they underwent a harsh interrogation unique to the mafia and spilled everything. First off, John wasn't even a mafia member, just unemployed. He had been lying about being the son of a gang boss, extorting money from people. He told Michelle the same, saying,
Don't worry, my dad will take care of anything.
So, she believed him and boldly continued her affair with him. It made no sense for me, who married her as an excuse to leave her parents' house, to pay her while she freely cheated behind my back. Of course, I demanded compensation, $100,000 from each of them.
There's no way we have that kind of money.
That's outrageous. As they made a fuss, my mother sternly said, Do you think the law applies in the mafia world? Alice was furious too, saying,
You'll pay dearly for hurting my brother.
Still, Michelle and John kept fussing about not being able to pay, and I was getting fed up. That's when my father stepped in with a solution.
We're not so uncouth as to saddle people with debts they can't repay.
He took them away to a certain place. It was a risky adult entertainment establishment frequented by the wealthy.
You work here until your debt is paid off.
With that, the two were shipped off to an unfamiliar land. Whether they can actually work their way back, I honestly don't know. That's because the mafia's nuisance fees tend to snowball. In fact, my family is also claiming nuisance fees from them, people who don't follow society's rules. That's the mafia's way. I then went to Michelle's parents' house to explain the situation. Michelle has been unfaithful. She's working hard to pay me alimony. She's employed by my family's business, so you can rest assured. When I showed them a naked photo of the two, my in-laws were furious. After a deep apology, they said they were relieved it was my family's business and decided to cut ties with her. The fact that I had introduced myself as completely unaffiliated with the mafia when we got married must have worked in my favor. As for John, it turned out he had a wife. They had been enduring his tyranny while living in poverty. I visited John's wife and handed her the divorce document from John and $100,000. Use this to start over. After briefly explaining the situation, I left with those words behind. The $100,000 can be recouped from those two, so I'm not concerned. Of course, I made Michelle sign the divorce document too, and my divorce was finalized without issue. But when I tried to get her to sign, she put up quite a fight.
I was only deceived. Help me, Paul. Give me another chance.
I remember feeling my mafia blood awaken for the first time in a while as she cried and clung to me. Write it down while you still can. With just those words and the display of my mafia demeanor, my wife shakily signed on the divorce document. After that, I moved out of the apartment and went back to my parents' house. My father has been asking if I'm ready to take over his position, but I have no intention of joining a mafia just yet. I still don't even have an eye for women, so could you keep leading the gang a little longer? My dad could only give a wry smile at the conviction in my words. And Alice has become even more overprotective of me than ever.
If you ever date someone, I'll test them for you.
For some reason, I suddenly feel like my next chance at marriage has been pushed even further away. My mother just laughs at Alice's antics. Paul, you've had it tough. You need to find a good partner like your father. Yeah, right. After seeing my dry laugh, she jabbed me with her elbow. I guess I'm no match for the women in my family. I've decided to continue living with my family in harmony, supporting each other. Thank you for listening to my story. Make sure you know all about your potential spouse before you making a decision. Love can overcome various obstacles, but you might not truly know the person you love. How well do you know the person next to you right now? How did you feel about this story? Whether you empathized or were surprised, any comment is welcome. I would be happy if you could write your farts in the comments. Thank you for watching until the end. Please like, subscribe, and support the channel. See you in the next video.